So, we're going to have fun. Yeah, we're going to have fun. This is a talk that I do quite a lot, but it changes every single time. And it's fun. You will get out of it what you put into it. So, ask questions. Doesn't really matter how long this takes. Eventually someone will get really bored and fall asleep, but that's fine. Right. I don't really care. I hate these things, but they're vaguely useful for you lot to know roughly who the hell I am. Just now, I've just started a new security company called Damn Good Security, but I've done IT support, incident responder, SOCs, phishing, vuln, everything blue, essentially. I've done it, ran it in a successful managed services company. So I was once doing an event, it was LUHack. Oh no, it wasn't, it was DEF CON Glasgow. And we went to the pub afterwards, and all the students went to one table. And the rest of us that were like professionals sat at the other table. And eventually I'm just sitting looking at it going, and walked across and went, the people that are going to hire you for your next job are literally sitting over there going, why won't they come and talk to us? Because we know shit. So there is a large piece of because I've done the whole security services thing, I've hired lots of graduates, hired lots and lots of people, to be honest. I dislike hiring people because every time you do an interview it feels like there's a little bit of your soul being taken away. It's a very bizarre thing. It's really draining to interview. So if you guys are going for an interview, like to go and get your first job, and the person seems a little bit tired and stuff like that, they've probably interviewed another 15 people before you and they're knackered. So ask them if they want to go get some water if they're okay. Amazing how much of that will go down well. Co-founder of the cyber community which runs Hack Thursday, which is a thing that happens in Glasgow the third Thursday every month. And we have a whole bunch of IT and security professionals and sometimes random people from the street. Like there's a lawyer that comes along to it. We don't know, he doesn't really understand much of it, but he just has a good laugh. And we do lots of things in the community. So we talk at schools and bits and pieces like that. So I'm generally busy and in trouble with my wife. So, this is really easy talk for me to give because I never need to practice it ever, which is mildly horrific for Tom, who feels he has to practice it within an inch of his life apparently. But there are no prizes because I completely forgot to pick up Mars bars. Normally when I do these things, if somebody says something funny, amusing, tries to leave early, I throw a Mars bar at their head. And the first time,
you throw Mars bars at your own head?
No. That would be stupid. So the way this works is it's complete audience participation. There's a whole bunch of topics up there. You shout out what number you want and we're going to talk about it. That's it. It's a really easy game. Doesn't require you to read the manual. So somebody shout a number out.
2.
Hey.
I've asked ChatGPT, but it says it's not okay. But so maybe you could enlighten me on. Thank you.
So, in industry, there are bodgers, and there are people that just get stuff done, and there are ways to get ahead, do things, there are ways to bypass processes and things like that. One of the weird things you'll come across as a professional is occasionally you wander into someone and go, who the hell did that? So for example, in a certain large critical national infrastructure organization that I may have ran the entire blue team for before, one of the engineers came up with what we want to do is we want to send this extra telemetry back, so I'm just going to buy a ton of Raspberry Pis and put them everywhere. He's like, Raspberry Pi is not an enterprise level device. If you require enterprise performance, scalability, security, you don't put it on a Raspberry Pi. But when Raspberry Pis came out, every IT firm, every company in the world just went off and went, hey, we can buy one of them and we stick it on the back of the TV and good news, we've now got an infographic system. It's fantastic. The problem is everybody forgets that they're there, so they're a massive security risk because let's face it, nobody ever updates them. And so you end up having these random little boxes that are just landmines for your network lying about. And it's no, if you have to do something in an enterprise, go mock up something and say, hey, proof of concept, will it work? Yeah. But when you go to sit there and say, hey, this is critical national infrastructure and we're really, really dependent on getting these numbers back in the future, you don't put it on a 40 quid piece of kit. It's that simple. You have to sit there and go, you know what, I need to be able to scale these things, I need to deploy them at scale, I need to have all the security features, I need to have these things, not a Raspberry Pi. And a lot of this comes down to when you're working with techies and when you guys are working out in the field. What you class as money for you, I mean, you guys are students, so you're grabbing all the free food and stuff like that, but what you class as your personal finances and what business runs in terms of finances are massively different things. I shrugged and went, meh, it's only 3 million quid, let's go get one. And you're sitting there going, but if I look at that with my personal life, I'm like, so, but what? And you're saying, oh yeah, depends what your budgets are. The hack that happened with AI and Teams and the bank, and somebody joined in, the CFO joined a Teams call and authorised the guy to go and move 20 million euros from one place to another. If you go and chat with bank and CISOs, sometimes 20 million quid is a rounding error in their day. So when you sit there and go, oh right, we're going to deploy this out, but I mean that's like going to be like 300 quid a site. Oh no, the place runs in millions. So go buy the proper stuff. Never deploy stuff, never deploy your proof of concepts out in a prod. It happens everywhere, and it's the reason people get owned all the time. Right. Does everybody now understand how this game works? Except, you any idea how hard it is to make PowerPoint do this? It's like so. I mean, you just like go, yeah, I just want an animation. Okay, I'll do random. 6, did we say? Everybody says 6.
I was gonna say 11.
Well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 11's good. So 6, the worst incident ever. Yes. Everybody always picks this one. And it's generally in the first 2 or 3 at most when we do the stock. Now you might start noticing that when you pick a question, the answer you get makes you go and think about something completely different, and that's not what you thought we were going to be talking about. You're one, we do, it's fine. But yeah, the worst incident ever. I've done lots of incident response. I've done lots of incident response in universities, in schools. I've done it in just about every type of business you can think of. But when you turn around and say, what's the worst incident ever? What do you mean by worst? Is it the amount of money that walks out the door? That's if you're working in business, that's a reasonable thing to go. Is that how we measure things?
How many companies went bankrupt?
Not many. Only small businesses do, which is why I started the company. But ultimately, yeah, the worst is actually about the impact. And if you think about impact, it's kind of like risk. You look at all the different layers that you can do it. Is it the people? Is it the technology and stuff like that? So worst impact ever could be how many machines had to be rebuilt. So when you had Maersk and they melted the entire global network and had to go to Nigeria to get a backup domain control, it hadn't been replicated and it was the only way they came back. That was pretty bad. Wasn't me, thank God. But that one, that's a bad incident. For me, the worst incident I've ever had, there was 850 or 60 grand walked out the door through business email compromise. That's why business email compromise is really popular with bad guys, because it makes money. But it wasn't the money that bothered me, it was the fact that, so I'd been asked by a regulator type insurance firm to go in and review how the people had ran the incident. So business email compromise, bad guy gets into the mailbox, starts pretending to be some random bloke that was a lawyer, conveyancing lawyer, and over time you see the domains changing. So he's like, hang on a second, that's no longer the right domain there. So you know, the guy had no idea. He was logging in and didn't see any of these email conversations happening because they're all just getting shifted out into. It's fine. See, I can. She seems nice. I can't like. Fine. But Yeah, the business email compromise, and eventually what ended up happening is they went, "Oh right, yeah, brilliant, we're happy to transfer the money, can you send it to the new account please, here's the details here." Now, every financial and law firm have loads of processes to protect against this sort of stuff. It's to stop people stealing stuff, because if you can go around transferring 800 grand by yourself without any kind of oversight, people are going to steal from you eventually. But what had actually happened is COVID had kicked in, so the process should have been that when the woman in the office got the please change the account thing, the process is go to the person's office and confirm that that is what you want to happen. And the backup is phone them, which nowadays not so great, but you know, AI, awesome. But because it was COVID and they just all started working from home and nobody really knew how to phone anybody and she didn't have the mobile number, so she emailed him and said, "Is it okay if I change the account details?" And he went, "Yes," or some random guy from Russia went, "Duh." And lo and behold, the money went out the door. There was a whole bunch of things wrong with that incident. And the reason that it's the worst incident is when I couldn't interview the woman who'd done the transfer incorrectly because they fired her. Hadn't followed processes, boom, gone. Can't do anything about it, so she was fired. So that's kind of sucky. You know, you don't want people to lose their jobs because of business email compromise, but it happens. But the guy whose email was compromised ended up being off sick with stress for like 4 months. And it took me months to get hold of him. And eventually I got a thing, and he was a completely broken man when I phoned him and said, and I ended up spending most of the time on this 2-hour call with him, telling him it wasn't his fault. And so the impact to, like a business email compromise, money goes out the door, everybody goes, it's dead simple incident response. It's the sort of thing, if you decide to go and be an incident responder in a managed service, that's the sort of thing you'll be doing day in, day out. It's very straightforward, really easy, assuming the customer's done the logs and et cetera, et cetera. But the impact was that person was broken. So that guy was, I mean, he'd done absolutely nothing wrong. He'd actually phoned the IT team and said, "I think something's gone a wee bit funny," at one point, and they just closed it as a false positive. So yeah, I had words to say about said IT company. But in the end, you're thinking, right, the impact to these things, if a company gets popped, you'll get a dip in the share price, and then 6 months later, it'll be back up, if not stronger than it was before, as long as you don't cock up doing the incident response. If you cock up doing the incident response and call all your customers silly names, then it'll go badly. But mostly, yeah, SolarWinds, one of the biggest breaches going for a while. SolarWinds is absolutely fine. Doing great. Yeah, the CEO like nearly went to jail and it's going backwards and forwards, but in the end, company stock, the money, the thing that matters to a company, is absolutely fine. So yeah, incidents are horrible, but they're normally horrible for the people that you're dealing with. And that is a key skill that you need to have, which is that it's going to be telling somebody it's going to be okay, this isn't your fault. Don't say it in front of a lawyer, but other than that, yeah, it's fine. But yeah, it's the impact on people. And I mean, if you're doing incident response and you're trying to do it in your own IT company, you end up with like 5 guys working for like 3 days straight on pizza and Monster. And they're absolutely knackered, and then everything else gets impacted. But in the end, it's always the person that got popped. Guy had done nothing wrong, did everything right. No MFA, but that's not his fault, it's the IT guy's fault. Right.
11.
Any number at all, any number. Oh, number 4. Yeah, I'll need Tom to come up and stand with me for number 4. No, it's fine. Right, let's do number 11. We started Hack Thursday because you need to blow off steam, and it's a whole bunch of fun, a whole bunch of nonsense, and a whole bunch of cyber people come along to it just to blow off steam once a month. It was actually really good at the beginning of COVID because we all started drinking. So there was a whole bunch of different groups, but the one I was in was InfoSec Happy Hour. Every Friday, and folk were just hammered. But we had really random people, and we all know people in the industry, so you ended up getting like Jack Resider from Darknight Diaries came along. You sit and having a beer with him. It's like awesome. And then you're sitting going, right, okay, Troy Hunt, he came along, and we kept trying to get money. How do you make money from like Have I Been Pwned? How did that work? And you said you were going to sell it to someone, and it's fallen through, and you're not allowed to say who it was. Who was it? And cyber, especially on the blue team, and the response is really stressful. And if you cannot walk away from it and go and laugh or go and do something else, you will burn out. Everybody sits and goes, hey, I got burnout because I was like really busy. Like, no, it's like when you literally cannot face opening your inbox anymore because you're frightened that something might be in there that you need to deal with. Or you're like, if you're not in a meeting, you don't know what to do yourself. So you end up having like 8-hour days of meeting. And if somebody like cancels a meeting, you end up sitting looking at the wall going, I don't know what I'm doing. That sort of stuff happens. Done it myself. But you need to be able to, yes, it's a very serious business. You might notice I'm not a very serious person sometimes. But being able to judge when you need to walk away or being able to judge when you need to go and have a laugh about something, it's one of these ones where if you don't go get yourself a community like this and then and do stuff that's not cyber related or IT related sometimes. Different things work for different people, but what you need to do is realize that every single person around you is going through this crap as well. I mean, you all have deadlines and you're all sitting at like stupid o'clock in the morning because you decide to go for a walk instead of doing your coursework. But that stuff happens, but everybody's going through that thing. And so you don't worry about it, you just need to turn around and go, Jesus, that was a rough one. And then you're going to have a laugh. And the worst comes to the worst, like you ping us at Cyber Community or like Hack Thursday and we will make you laugh because we're particularly good at it. So, yeah, if you cannot stop and deal with your own mental health, it's really, really bad. And it's one of the ones where I hated being an MSSP because SOC analysts have the worst job in the world. Because you have to look at 100 tickets a day and you have to get them all right. And if you do that over and over and over again and night shifts and stuff like that, it's not great. But there is AI going to take my job button at some point, so yes. But ultimately, it's one of these ones where you go, you need to look after yourselves. It's going to be a strict, like even if you end up being a pen tester, there will be some point where you're sitting there going, oh, I've just brought down the network. Happens all the time. But it just is one of these ones where, look, you need to look after yourselves and you need to keep an eye on the people next to you and just make sure that they're okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with turning around to someone and say, dude, are you all right? You need to then turn around and say yes or no properly, but ultimately, yeah. So yeah, C11's nice. Not as exciting as you thought it was going to be now.
It was very insightful though.
Well, right.
Since you said any number, can you do 20?
Yes, but then basically I'd go there, 16, 17, 18. So it ends up being 5, because that's the way maths works. So, 5, because somebody said 20. So, you might have noticed I'm slightly old. You're supposed to say no, of course not. Come on, fucking students. Right. One of my first IT jobs was working in a Motorola fab doing IT support. You try to do desktop support in a spacesuit.
Sorry, we can't hear you now at the back.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll shout more. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of my first jobs in IT, I worked at Motorola, and I was like the team leader at some IT like help desk team. And I had to do desktop support, and at the time, my company made me wear a suit and tie to any customer client site. So Motorola was a customer, so I had to wear a suit and tie. And I had to wear a space suit to go into the fab areas because they're building wafers and you can't have any dust. You know, like. So if you try to do IT support wearing 3 layers of rubber gloves and a spacesuit and a suit, you get really warm really fast. It was a very odd place to work anyway, because basically when you get your induction into the fab area, don't touch that, it'll kill you, don't touch that, that'll melt your bones, don't touch that, that will electrocute you and set your bones on fire. Like, right, that's not good. It was a very odd and scary place, except when you looked at the fab workers who, they basically took the wafers out of one machine and took it to the next one. And they just lean on an acid bath. It's an open thing, it bubbles, it beeps, and there's like, what do you do at the weekend? And you're like, it's utterly terrifying. And it was just like one of those really, really odd situations. But I had to wear a suit. So I wore a 3-piece suit every single day, crawled under desks, I wore the space suit, did IT support. And that was just because that was the work culture. Nowadays, things are a bit more flexible for most employers. Like some people, I went for my interview at Quorum Cyber, where I was the head of managed services, and I went in and the CEO said, "You're wearing a shirt and tie." And everybody else at the office is like jeans and a t-shirt, and even he's like jeans and a top. But I was like, well, that's what you do. That's the culture of when you go for an interview. I don't know what your work culture is, so I'm going to go to play it safe with you go for an interview, you wear a shirt and tie. Did have a guy that came to interview for me. He was wearing a green and red reflective shirt, like the weird shimmery thing, and a Jean-Luc Picard tie, like full face of Jean-Luc Picard. I was sitting looking and going, yes, you've worn a shirt and tie. I'm not sure you've kind of got what you need to do. But what you actually need to take away from this one is, if I go to a customer and I go in like jeans and a t-shirt, and that company culture is very, you will wear a shirt and tie, nobody will take me seriously. Okay? They'll literally look at me and go, nah. Similarly, if I turned up here wearing a 3-piece suit and tie, you guys would look at me and go, he seems like I'm not going to listen to him. And it is, because it's a culture thing. So I had absolutely no idea who I was going to end up meeting today, so I just kind of went for a middle of the road. Middle of the road is absolutely fine. I can wear this and I can walk into a boardroom and give somebody some advice, or I can stand in front of a bunch of students and call them names. But the whole point is, if you turn around and say, no, I'm never ever wearing a shirt and tie, I have no problems wearing a tie. People go, oh my God, you will choke. It's like, people have been wearing ties for like hundreds of decades, hundreds of years. And I have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever. It just doesn't factor in because I'm so used to it. But if you turn around and say to your client, you're a pen tester, and you go, yeah, I'm going to go in wearing Bermuda shorts, flip-flops, and a Hawaiian shirt that's mismatched buttoned. You see where I'm going with this one? Maybe you're sweating quite heavily as well, and you plonk yourself down in front of them and say, you need to fix this, you need to fix that, you need to fix that. The people in the boardroom, or the IT managers that you're trying to communicate to, will not take you seriously. And at that point, what was the point of doing a PED test if nobody's going to get the results because you decided it was a good idea to go wearing Bermuda shorts and not shower? So, when you are working and when you're dealing with lots of different clients, it's quite often that you end up trying to go a middle of the road sort of thing, because you need them to be able to take you seriously. If you can't communicate with whoever you're doing work for, doesn't matter whether it's a risk evaluation, a pen test, vulnerability management, even sitting talking about a phishing campaign and what the results were. If the people will judge you on how you look, that's not great as a society, but it's fact. So if you can't communicate your results properly, then what was the point of you doing the job in the first place? You failed because you can't communicate. Never done the mismatched Hawaiian shirt, but I might give it a shot.
Did the Picard guy get hired?
Did the what guy?
The Picard guy, the tie.
No. He walked in and said, is it okay that I chained my bike up at the railings at the front? You're like, well, at the front of the really fancy office building that we're in, and you've like and it was like an old racer, rusty bike, and I'm like, to be honest, it wasn't that. It wasn't. He was just no very good. So, and he had no concept. When you're doing IT work, a lot of it is, and even in security, a lot of it is customer. And if you can't deal with people, he really couldn't deal with people and couldn't read the room, then you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. So I got somebody better. Turned out not to be that much better in the end when I think about it, but sure. Right. So I don't recommend.
Yeah.
Give me a number.
4.
4. All right. Okay. You do need to be a wee bit careful in the workplace. I mean, there was a phase of the complete political correctness, and you must have diversity, and you must have all of these things. It's amazing how quickly somebody can not take something as being funny. So I can stand up here and pick on Tom, because to be honest, there's nothing Tom can do to me. There's no HR that you can call. So I can, I'm not going to physically assault.
He could call someone.
Yes, he could, and I could get escorted off the site, and somebody could post something mean about me on social media. All right.
Call HR, but you call Scott.
Have you? But Scott's like that high. But no. Having a good relationship with the people you work with is absolutely fine, but you do need to be a little bit careful around bullying. Sometimes I've had people that got offended by the way I was talking to somebody else, and they happened to be walking past. And you're like, so why are you here? But it does happen, and it's a giant pain in the backside. And HR is a giant pain in the backside. But HR is there to keep you all safe in your workplace. If you don't have HR, then bad things can generally happen. So again, you have this, well, let's call them human remains, which apparently is quite popular. And they only ever do horrible stuff. They don't do anything. They're completely useless. They took ages to send me my pay slip or whatever. You need them. They need to be there. They need to protect the business. The business needs to make sure that you're not going to turn around and sue them for 10 million quid tomorrow because you didn't like the colour of Tom's shirt.
To be fair, I'm not mad at that.
So, but in the end, HR, facilities and people like that, you do need to keep them all on side. It's always a good idea when you're in a work environment to be nice to the janitorial staff. I have had people deliberately locked into a building for 4 hours because they pissed the Janny off. It happens. It is just like normally these people are really, really nice. They might be a little bit grumpy sometimes because they've got too much to do, but HR, payroll, facilities, always be nice to them because you're going to need them at some point. These are the people that either let you in and out of the building or pay you. So be nice to them. Oh God, I really should just do that. Right, let's go with a number.
9.
9. Oh. It's for you. Very similar to the end of the last one. So, in security, we traditionally say no to people to keep them secure. It's not great for the business. If you keep saying no to everybody. And generally, you've got some IT guy that's trying to do a million different things, and then he goes, all right, I've got a solution, I'm going to do this. You go, no, and then you walk away. Now, as fun as that can be sometimes, what this is actually about is that don't say no to things, ask what people are trying to achieve. So if somebody has a really stupid idea, maybe trying to send data packets using pigeons. See? Now, that's kind of a stupid idea, but what we should turn around and go, what are you trying to achieve? All right, there's a really good and secure way of doing that over there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We'll probably save a ton of money. And pigeons? But what you want to be able to do is in anything, if somebody asks you something, one of the things I always train IT support people or like blue team people is Don't just answer the question your customer just asked you, whether it's an internal customer, somebody you work with, or whether it's like a customer. Don't just say yes or no. Sometimes saying yes, yeah, you can do that, and it turns out what they're doing is ludicrous and such a bad way of doing things. You are an expert. People are coming to you for your expertise. So why wouldn't you turn around and say, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to do here? Oh, right, actually, we already have a process for that. You don't need to reinvent that. Or we already have tech that does that. Or no, we're not going to put an Avanti box in, because that would be bad. But you end up sitting there going like, okay, if you help people achieve what they're trying to do, they will then be an advocate for everything you do. And sometimes as security people, we have to say, no, that's a really bad idea for X, Y, and Z reasons, and it makes people's lives difficult. But you don't have to do that every single time. What you're trying to do is go, what are you trying to achieve? Right, you need to be able to get that file from there to there. Right, let's not staple it to a pigeon. What we'll do is we have this particularly good cloud platform for moving files securely from one place to another. Let's go and use that. The person probably doesn't know that stuff exists. That's why they dreamed up, I'm going to staple it to a pigeon, because they don't know all the facilities and all the services and stuff like that the company has. Always find out what the person's trying to achieve and then help them with that. Then you won't get yourself locked in by the janitor for 5 hours on a Friday night. No guy that happened to, and told him not to piss the Janny off, but he did. But ultimately, yeah, you just they're going, find out what people are trying to achieve, because you are an expert in your field. When you walk out of here, you are going to be an expert in something, one hopes. Otherwise, wasted a ton of money and time, but okay. But ultimately, yeah, you want to find out what is somebody trying to achieve and then help them make that happen. Sometimes even if it's not directly your job, you say, well, you need to go and speak to such and such. You need to do these things. If you are seen as somebody that enables the business, you will get promoted. You will get people that come to you and ask for help the one time that you need it. Is that if you say no and are completely belligerent to people, when the mouse starts moving all by itself on their PC, they're going, yeah, I'm not phoning him because he just shouts at me all the time. You probably want them to phone you and say, by the way, my mouse is moving all by itself on my screen and it seems to be trying to dump stuff into the water supply. Yeah. So yeah, it is find out. You are here to enable things. You're here to enable businesses. You're not here to say no. So if you go in with that, I'm going to try and enable things, you will get a lot better results. And you get really like them, they're brilliant, you end up getting that promotion a little bit sooner. It will follow you all the way through your career. You are a person that gets things done. It's a massively good thing to have. Right, where are we? One? All right. Yeah. So, this is again about community. Find yourself a community. If you don't have one around you, build one. So you guys are great. You've got this. But when you go out into the great wide world, stop hanging out in the student union, because that's bad. I know people that do this. And they think they're absolute rock stars because students will wander around going, you're amazing. And you're like, really? That's a bit creepy, dude. But ultimately, you need to find communities. You need to go and do things with people. So we started Hack Thursday in the Raven bar, hence a raven. And the cyber community's logo is a bunny, hence bunny, raven, cyber. You go into a bar. And yeah, so we couldn't find a community that we liked in the Glasgow area. DEF CON 141 had been running out of the student union where no professionals would go to it anymore. So basically we're just going along and literally there was a pile of students like standing next to you hoping you'd buy them a drink. It was kind of weird, kind of and I actually at one point, the first time I went in, nobody was doing a talk. And we're like, well, we're kind of here to share info, do a talk, have a chat. So I literally went up to the bar where they had a Spotify running on the machine and went, is that connected to that screen? He's like, yeah, right. Went off, pulled this up, and we just sat and did a talk. But ultimately, it's about community. You need to have that outlet. And you'll find that when you leave uni, especially if you end up moving to a new city or something along those lines, you might find yourself suddenly adrift. Now, if you go to work in a SOC or something like that, that's generally an okay way to get into cyber until we replace that with AI. But ultimately, we have this, you have a bunch of people doing the same job, etc. But if you end up being the cyber person in a really small company or in an IT department, these things happen, and you might find yourself adrift and away from what was your network people that you could talk to. So if you can't find one, make one. We have a good laugh every third Thursday, and it keeps us all on an even keel. It keeps you, like, you don't lose touch with people that you might not necessarily have pinged them an email or jumped in a meeting and stuff like that with them. So it's really good. And to be honest, we keep meeting new people. Like every single month, a couple of new people turn up and you're like, hey, what do you do? We had the guy that was an incident responder for eBay come in once. You're like, oh, that sounds like an interesting job. Turns out it's not really that interesting a job. He also doesn't know what the NIST cycle is. We play slideshow roulette, so we put up a slide and he had to present on it, but I put the entire thing with none of the names on it. And he just sat there and went, but I did SANS. You're like, it's like, right, okay. Kind of felt a wee bit sorry for him, but yeah, he was a really, really nice guy, ex-police, had wanted to move into cyber, and he ended up being what he called an incident responder for eBay, but it turns out it's just a SOC analyst. It's one of the weird things. You go, oh yeah, because you're dealing with a ticket, you're an incident responder. So, no, those are very different jobs. But okay, welcome, and yeah, but again, it's a good laugh, you have fun. It's really important when you leave uni, especially if you end up being remote from everyone that you've been dealing with for the last few years. The other top tip is just stay in academia if you like, then you never have to worry about it, but I know a few people that have done that too. Yes. AI will come along and replace a whole bunch of people's jobs. You guys are going to walk into an environment where we don't know what the jobs will be by the time you finish uni. Within 5 to 7 years, level 1 SOC analysts will be getting done more and more by AI. That's your entry point into a lot of cyber. It's a normal first step for a whole bunch of people. If they want to go down the blue team route, they go work in a SOC, do night shifts for like 6 months, and then you earn your stripes and you don't do night shifts anymore. That's pretty much. But AI is one of these weird ones where I kind of felt sorry for the salespeople. Now, I don't say this very often, but salespeople have been using AI in cyber to sell stuff for like 10 years, but it was really machine learning at best. And mostly AI in cyber was PowerPoint. That was it. It was just stuff that was what you were selling. But now there are companies that come along. I looked at a website the other day, and they literally, it's not cyber, but it was like a sales bot that would get you 300 leads a month, and you paid $75 for this AI chat bot thing that would go off, send emails, have conversations with your customers, and then pass it over to you when it had got the conversation to a point. It's like, right. But the interesting thing was there was another 9 jobs on the page that are saying coming soon. And on there were things like finance and marketing. AI is apparently some random stat about like 90% of the jobs that are going to exist in 10 years haven't been thought of yet. It's like some random set of numbers where you just sit there and go, right, that's really weird. I don't know who's thinking those jobs up. Hope nobody's expecting it to be me, because I have no idea. But there is. The thing about this is you're going to have to roll with the punches. It's exactly the same as any other bit of tech. Cyber moves really, really quickly. There's always a new exploit, a new OS to go pop, a new cloud thing that somebody wants to charge extra before you can have it secure. But you end up having this thing where you sit and go, you know what, the tech keeps moving all the time. Bad guys are already using AIs to generate like phishing emails. I'm not even sure they needed to, but they have got it to the point where it's doing those first interactions. One of the things we did at Hack Thursday last night was one of the panel questions was, what do you think about the guy in Russia that trained a Tinder bot to chat to women for him, and he ended up marrying one of them. So he was talking to 5,000 women. He trained an AI to answer how he would typically answer, and then just unleashed it on Tinder, and it was having conversations, and eventually it would end up having a kind of conversation of like, yeah, it looks like we should meet up, and then it would pass him to him, and he would go on the date. And he met his wife on it, because the reason they got married is because they turned around and she'd said to the bot, not realising it was a bot, oh, I've got a wedding to go to this weekend. And the bot said, wouldn't you rather it was your own wedding? And she went, yes. And so they got married. It's weird. And when he's obviously come clean, because we were sitting going, well, you know, it's now in the news. She actually applauded his ingenuity and said he put a lot of effort into it, so she didn't mind. I'm like, sure. But yeah, AI, any new tech will come along and change the industry underneath your feet. You have to roll with the punches. You always have to keep learning and understanding what the next thing is coming along. Otherwise, I mean, yes, there is technically still COBOL programmers in the world. I did it in my sandwich year. I worked at the Bank of Scotland, did COBOL program. But, you know, I quickly went, COBOL's horrible. I do understand how to spell the word environment right, because it really didn't like you misspelling that. But ultimately, yeah, it was like that, roll with it, move with the new technology. You will still have legacy systems like a COBOL box somewhere, by mainframes that half the banks and stuff run on, but ultimately you need to be able to move. And if you stay too attached to one process, one bit of tech or something like that, you're going to miss the boat. You're always going to have to be learning. What you should have done is become a dentist. I mean, that must be much easier. It's like you learn about teeth, you learn about the drills, and you're done. You never have to learn anything ever again. But no, you've picked an industry where you're going to be learning all the time. So keep it up.
You know, dentists have to spend 4 years at medical school.
Yeah, I wasn't saying it was hard, but you need to like spend 4 years getting your like cyber IT origami degree, whatever. So, I mean, it's not that hard, surely. I mean, teeth, but right.
How about
3? So, has anybody heard of Trace Labs? Yes. So, Trace Labs is a CTF essentially for OSINT, but it's on real missing person cases. And so what happens is a bunch of hackers all come together to have a competition, and basically they get real cases from Trace Labs Foundation, which is in the States, works with law enforcement, and you end up trying to troll all your OSINT, trying to find where these people are. And you get points for if you find a photo that has the person in it and you can identify where it is after the date that they went missing, things like that. So it's a massive OSINT platform. I have a bunch of friends that do it. I did it once and stopped. And the reason I stopped is that it messed with my head, because I think it was like a 14-year-old girl was missing. And having 2 kids myself, I suddenly went, oh, that's really horrible, and it really did a number on my own head. And I sat there and went, you know what? Since I became a dad, bizarrely, there's a whole bunch of things. I can't watch movies that have kids in jeopardy. I've no idea, didn't expect it at all. Before, I probably would have laughed my face off at, some child like falling into a meat grinder. Now it's like, no. I cannot do that. And so for me, I was like, okay, I know there is a limit. It's like I couldn't ever be a nurse. I had a customer that was a cancer charity. And we were doing a service review one month of the SOC, and everything was absolutely great. And I went, hey, next month, why don't you guys come here to the hospice? and we'll show you around. It'd be really great for you. I'm like, yeah, great, that'd be fantastic. And then I ditched it onto I put another service review manager on it because I know I cannot go to a hospice and watch people in that state. It's like, I know my own limitations. I was like, nope, I definitely cannot do that. It was a kids' cancer charity, so it was just like, hell no. But we need people like that to be looking after, kids that are, terminally ill and stuff like that. I know I can't do it, and I applaud other people that can do it. But when you are volunteering, so there was another trace labs that was being set up to do, but it was going to be doing kids. And it was purely going to be missing kids, so kids trafficking, stuff like that. And one of the guys in our group was like, hey, I'm going to go and do that. And we're like, I don't think you should, because that is going to mess you up severely psychologically. Like, you just are not going to be able to handle it. And in the end, they cancelled it because they just couldn't get, they needed to have counsellors on, and you had to go and do special training with the police before you could go do the CTF. And you're like, right, if you can handle that and you want to be able to go and do it, that's absolutely fantastic. But you do need to be mindful of what you can and can't handle.
No.
Because sometimes what you end up volunteering with ends up damaging you mentally. And so I don't do trace labs because, like, most of the time it's like a 30-year-old bloke that's gone missing. I don't really have any massive issue looking for that. But just in case there's a young teenager or something like that, I'd be like, yep, nope, can't do that. That just messes me. I will not sleep for a week. So, no. So there are loads of things we can do as cyber professionals to help the world. Trace Labs is a really, really good one. People will love it. It's like absolutely fantastic. I just know that I go, nope, that messes with my head. There will be things that you sit there and go, and when you find it, just know and stop and go, yeah, there's absolutely no shame. The guys know that I don't do trace labs, and they know why I don't do trace labs. Because I'm like, yep, no, if there's a kid involved, that's me messed up for weeks, if not months. So no, I'm not doing it. So volunteer, go out and go do good in the world. Just make sure that when you're volunteering, you know what you're getting into, how much time it's going to take, and all these sorts of things, and just make sure that you're actually prepared, because sometimes when you are volunteering, you're helping people in the worst places in their lives, and that can really mess up you as a volunteer. If you're cold and dead inside, great, go for it. But quite a lot of people get into cyber because they want to make a difference and because they're feeling and empathetic, or they're Tom. But you end up having this, you just need to make sure that you know what you're getting into. And if you think that something's going wrong, just stop and step back and go, look, I can't do it. And there's zero shame in it. I know I did it and I'm like, yep, nope. As much fun as trawling through, OSINT sources is for people. We've not done 7, 8, 10, 12, 13 and 14.
13.
Say that again?
13.
13. Ah. So this one is on there because I did a talk at G3C, for those that were having a conversation, around honeypots and deploying them, how to do it, what's good about them, etc., etc. And then at the very next conference, one of the guys at that talk went off and did a talk on honeypots. And everyone was like, well, he just copied you. And you're like, well, but has he? So, yeah. I mean, the reason I did the honeypot talk is that I went to B-Sides Dundee, and a guy came from the States and did a talk on Thinks Canaries, and it was the worst presentation I've ever seen. He was there basically doing a sales pitch, but it was really bad. I was sitting there going, hang on a second, if you've got customers in the room and you're talking like this, they're not going to buy it. That's bad. And given how valuable honeypots and deploying it properly can be, that's not good for your customers, because they're just going, oh no. So I did a talk. I was like, you know what, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do a proper talk on Thinks Canary, deploying it, did QR codes and a whole bunch of cool things, and we had loads of fun, and G3C didn't tape it. But I have absolutely no problems with the fact that he went and did. Now, if he'd taken my slide, I mean, I gave him my slides. I gave him like a couple of the books that I had and said, there you go and do what you want with it. And he did. He went off and took it in another direction. You're like, well, brilliant. You've just taken I've just inspired somebody to go and do something and move on. So you need to be careful. Like, it's not just about talks. It's about, like, you know, just actions that you're doing in work and stuff like that, and sitting there going, hey, they just did that. It's like, hang on a second, if you've inspired somebody to go and do something, that's good on you. Yes, if somebody completely plagiarizes what you've done, you have a wee chat with them and go, really? But ultimately, when we give talks, you are inspiring someone. You want them to go away and think. The entire reason this one's set up like this entire talk, is that you get a question and then you end up getting an answer that's a completely different question to what you thought you were clicking on. So, go and do talks. And if you see somebody doing a talk and you go, hey, that's brilliant, I really want to find out about that, then fine, take that and then go and build the next version of the talk. It's all about passing knowledge on. It's all about sharing knowledge. So there's no problem with someone taking your inspiration and moving on with it and doing something, unless it's pure plagiarism, and then you take them around the side and give them a shoeing. Seven. So, in my sandwich year at uni, I did COBOL programming at the Bank of Scotland. There's another story that we'll get to about that, but it was one of these ones where I sat there and went, they actually handed me the RACAL manuals because they wanted to do chip and pin. Chip and pin was about to be rolled out, and they went, you know what's great? What we've done is we've one-way encrypted everybody's pins so that we just match the hashes. Great. Except we now want to give everybody brand new cards with a chip in it, and the pin needs to be on there. But we don't know what the pins are. So what are we going to do? And so me, as like a student with hair down to my ass and went, hang on. So I sat there, and that was my first time I ever saw encryption properly. And the RACAL manuals were like that big, and the machines were like huge. You probably do it on a Raspberry Pi now, badly. But I sat there and I sat and read through all these manuals, going. And at that point, nobody had ever taught me encryption, so nobody had ever talked about one-way encryption. So for me, I was thinking about like high school maths. If there's a formula and you know enough of the bits of the formula, you're going to be able to work out what the pin was. And then I sat there and read Heffy-Delman and all that. And you're like, oh, right, hang on a second, encryption. So I decrypted 100,000 chip and pin pins in 1994. Using a mainframe, or at least the plan was there to do it because we didn't push the button. Anybody know how I did it?
Aren't pins just 4-digit numbers, so you could just test if well, you could just test all the 4-digit numbers, and if they're not salting it, you could even just do
no salting. So you knew that if you took certain fields from the account, and then you could brute force it, and so I did. And they went, brilliant. It was like, yeah, wow, that's amazing. This is like, you should write this up. And I'm like, let's get to the downside. And they went, what? It's like, well, given the fact that it starts from 1,000 and goes up to 99999, and it takes me, with the kit you've given me, about 20 minutes to do each one, it's going to take us several years to decrypt everybody's pins. And they went, oh, like, and this was the best kit that they had. So it was like, right, okay, go think outside the box. If somebody gives you a challenge and you turn if you read the RACAL manual, it will say you cannot do this. Hell no, don't ever take a you cannot do this as an option. Just sit there and go, you know what, reasonably intelligent people, and Tom. But yeah, it was just right, okay, hang on a second, this is, when I looked at it, you go, yeah, nobody else had been able to do it. They had an entire services team looking at it going, yeah, we don't know how to do it. No idea why they decided to give it to the intern. But the intern looked at it and went, well, there's not that many numbers, so let's just go for it. Yes, there was no salting. It was just like, well, yeah, it was bad, and you could probably like pop it in a Python script nowadays. But back then, this was the best they had, and you're just sitting there going, but yeah, they sat there and looked at it and went, we pay like £500,000. Now this is back then, so quite a lot of money, even more now. We pay for all this, and you've just broken it in like a day. I'm like, well, I had lunch. So never take no for an answer when somebody says, here's a problem, you cannot do it. There's always a solution. It might not be a palatable solution. In the end, they reissued everybody a brand new pin because this went, it's just easier. And they dealt with the customer fallout. And you're like, well, that's a perfectly reasonable way to solve this problem as well. It's like, you know what, how unhappy will your customers be to have a new pin? They'll get over it. Brilliant. Well, there you go. There's a non-techie solution to how do you get the pins for all these cards. So it's not always a techie solution, but if you can brute force the crap out of someone, that's fun. But in the end, it's like a bit, think outside the box and go, what are you trying to achieve? And is there a non-techie answer for it? Sometimes there is. Give me a number.
14.
There was a reason why I couldn't do posture. Flies.
Right, so if you go to work in a SOC or a blue team or anything, you're going to be able to have access to logs and you're going to see things about people. And sometimes when you're doing investigations, it's not necessarily the Russians you're going to be investigating for them breaching. Sometimes it's going to be what Jeannie gets up to in the office at lunchtime using her porn VPN. And it's not hugely uncommon. You'd think that nobody would do this at work nowadays. I mean, back in the day when people didn't have like computers at home necessarily, then yeah, I mean, one of the guys at the Bank of Scotland used to look at ASCII porn. You'd find them very early in the morning. You're like, Derek, coming in now. Wait a minute. Right. It was weird. He was a weird guy. But sometimes you end up coming across somebody in the office, in the company you work for, or one of your customers that you're monitoring, and you end up coming across the, all right, the Jeannie's sitting watching Russian porn. Brilliant. So what do you do?
Block the IP address that the VPN is using and hope that nobody speaks of it again.
Yes, avoiding the yes, that's a perfectly valid. If you are a SOC analyst, you do absolutely nothing. She's got nothing to do with you, unless they're doing a presenting risk. So yeah, if they were using an unsafe VPN, if they were using an unsafe porn site, then you know, go give them the URL to Pornhub. But I mean, don't go to that because there's loads of malware on that one. This one's safer. I mean, they might be breaking the, you know, acceptable use policy for the machine. But in terms of, I've had analysts come up to me and go, oh, this is happening. Like, who did I phone? Nobody. Is there a security incident there? No. So, back away and wash your hands after you shake their hands. I have also had a customer phone me saying, I've got a real problem. Do you recommend split DNS on VPNs? And you're like, well, from an IT point of view, yes, split DNS is brilliant because you're taking the load off the VPN. Split DNS ends up sitting saying, hey, if you're trying to get something inside the corporate network over the VPN, you'll go over the VPN. But if you're just browsing the BBC, you're going out at your laptop on your home broadband. You lessen the load on the VPN, you lessen the load on the entire thing. IT people love it. Security monitoring people hate it because you suddenly go, no, hang on a second, everybody's internet traffic was quite happily going out through that proxy where we've got the logs and we can monitor and keep an eye on it, except sometimes now other internet traffic's happening, we've got no visibility whatsoever. I said, oh yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. He said, can you write me something up on that? Like, sure, you know, valued customer, you want to, it's like, what you're trying to achieve? It's like, yeah, the partners at the law firm keep browsing porn on dodgy websites at home, and so they won't let me turn split DNS off because they don't want their porn habits to appear on the office login. I'm like, I was like, dude, I can't do anything about that. I don't know what you do about that. What do you do? Because you're sitting there going, this is the partners in the law firm. They can afford to go to Curry's PC World and buy themselves an HD screen porn machine if they want to. But they don't, because quite often partners, they go, no, this is my company, so I will use this stuff. So, no, it's a corporate asset. No, it's mine, and if I want to get it sticky, then you're like, oh, no. At Motorola, we once had an issue where somebody complained that somebody was moving their PC about, and they weren't happy about it. And we went, right, okay, and it was like, yeah. Turns out folk from the fab, the kind of spacesuit area, would come out for their break and go around and shag on his desk. So basically, when they put the hidden CCTV in and looked at it, we all got a show. It was like, oh, like, yay, keyboard. And people are weird and generally slightly disgusting. That's not a bad thing, I'm not saying bad. But yeah, you do, you end up getting a lot of weird stuff. But ultimately, yes, if it's not a security incident, then you have to be super careful. And the easy answer is ask your manager. If you ever come across this, there's a test for if you want to go on work sites, on construction sites, and you have to have this like white card to say that you're safe and know how to put a hard hat on. But the answer to just about every question in the test is step away and contact your manager. It's like, a truck is reversing towards you while you're in a trench. What should you do? Step away, go talk to your manager. So it's not a bad thing, and you're never really going to end up like getting it wrong. So yeah, nobody's saying, you need to decide whether that particular brand of porn should be acceptable in that office. Generally, acceptable use policies say no porn, thank you. Boring. But it becomes, you don't have to make that judgment, and what you want to be able to do is turn around and say, you know what, that's why you have a senior or a team leader or a manager, is actually, you know what, see if that looks a little bit sticky, punt the question up, because I've had loads of SOC analysts go, Jeannie's looking at it, like, it's not a security incident, you can't do anything about it. I'll mention it in the service review to say, hey, look, you might want to look at your filtering logs. It's not a security thing, but you might want to go and look at it. Saying nothing else, and then I go, oh, and then, And then Jeannie stops looking. It's great.
What if your manager's the one backing the truck towards you?
Wait for him to land in the ditch, and then help him out, and go, what were you trying to achieve? Right, where were we?
12?
Just a brave man that picks risk.
It's a good board game.
Yeah. So our entire industry is around trying to sell people the next silver bullet. Acronym stands for a consultant regularly offering you more stuff, because that's what you end up doing in cyber. You do your review and then you go, hey, right, what about this shiny new thing? That's how business works, and cyber businesses are about making money. So you do have to accept the fact that if you don't help your cyber company make money, if you're an MSSP, then you're not going to have a job because the company needs to make money. It's crap when a company turns around to a techie and says, well, every time you talk to a customer, you need to be a salesperson. Except when you look at it and go, well, actually, you speak to the customer way more than anybody else in the organization. So speak to them and go, what are you worried about? What do you need to do? There's some easier ways to turn around and say, hey, by the way, we're doing this week. Would you like one? 2 for 1 if you want. That sucks. But actually having if you're having a touch point with a customer, it's called, then have a conversation and go, hey, so like what's going on? Any new projects? These sorts of things that will, again, get you promoted inside a company. If you're working in an MSSP and you cannot understand the fact that there are 3 things. There is being a cybersecurity business, there's being a cybersecurity salesperson, and there's being somebody that does cybersecurity. Everybody rants on LinkedIn and X and all these sorts of things about how crap it is, but If you don't have salespeople, you literally have no money in the organization, which means you don't have a job and you're not helping anybody because you don't have a job. And so you do have to come to the realization that somebody running a company, somebody doing sales, and somebody doing actually cybersecurity, actually hands on keyboard, all of those things are essential to an MSSP, for example, to run. And if you don't get that, you will never progress. Because if you can't understand the commercial impact of what you're doing, you can't actually have grown-up conversations with customers, which means you will end up being stuck sitting as you'll never make senior pen tester because you can't actually understand that you're supposed to charge a customer for doing the work that you're doing. That's the definition. It's not how much better you can pop a shell. It's actually being able to talk to people, customers, and understanding that sales shouldn't be a dirty word. Now, there's tons of cyber salespeople that are sleazy as, and I hate them, and I will not have anything to do with them. And there's tons of ranting and stuff like that. You find me on LinkedIn, I'm generally ranting about something nowadays, it feels. But ultimately, yeah, if you're working for a cybersecurity company, you are there as a resource to make money for the company. So yeah, risk is really important. Nobody, when I speak to graduates and stuff like that at like events and things like that, nobody ever says, I want to be a risk consultant, I want to do threat modeling. You're like, it's just as important, and to be honest, there's tons more money in being a risk consultant than there is in cyber. Just is, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs because I hate doing it. But ultimately, yeah, understanding that, you're a salesperson, we have a million acronyms out there which just suck. I spend a lot of time trying to explain to investment companies what the difference between EDR, MDR, XDR, ITDR are. And they go, what are these things? They're literally more ways for me to pull a little bit more money out from the customer. EDR is endpoint detection. It's antivirus. Don't know why we had to call it EDR, but sure. MDR, we're managing the antivirus for you. So I get to charge the customer slightly more. XDR, we're going to do the firewalls as well. Get to charge the customer just a little bit more money. Now, there are really good reasons for these things. If you're the security company and you have the ability to configure the firewalls, then the customer's generally going to have a better time with it. And the MDR, yeah, you're going to be keeping an eye on the security controls. So, yeah, but we are massively heavy on the acronyms, which may or may not have pigeons in them. But ultimately, yeah, what does the I stand for in risk? Because people go, right, I, it's a word. So you met Gerard, Russian guy, Irish guy, Russian. I used to do calls with all my analysts, and we would do a weekly kind of catch up and say, hey, what's going on? And we'd have a bit of fun, and you'd try and teach something. And so we were going around the analysts saying, what does this acronym stand for? What does DNS stand for? What does MDR stand for? Like, just going round and round and round them. And Gerard was like knocking it out of the park because he's just really good. And you're like, right. And it's like, right. And then we came back around and was like, right, Gerard, what does NCL stand for? Anyone know what NCL stands for? Stands for Newcastle. He was wearing a B-Sides Newcastle t-shirt, it literally said B-Sides NCL on it. But not every acronym is necessarily techie. And every organisation you work with will have its own language. When I worked at National Gas, they have TTL laptops. I was like, time to live laptops? But they've got loads of these different little acronyms. We're just going, that's not how the industry uses that acronym. Please stop it. Testing transmission laptop. It's the ones that they go and they connect to like machines, to like OT type stuff. But you're just sitting there going, yeah, well, I'm sitting looking at TTL laptop? Time to live? It's like, is it like a throwaway laptop? I don't understand. But ultimately, yeah, every organisation will end up having its own language. If you work at an MSSP, you end up having to try and talk that language across multiple different customers. So never be afraid to turn in and say, what do you mean by that acronym? Because I have solved an awful lot of communication snafus by the fact that people were talking using an acronym, but they were both talking about completely different things. And I was like, I don't understand how you can't fix this. It's like, oh, right, hang on a second. You guys are talking about different things, but you're using the acronym So never be frightened to turn around and say, see, when you say that, what do you mean? Which is why I asked you what SDR was earlier, because I was thinking, I know what SDR is, but I'm thinking, what do you think SDR is? Because you have to ask. And if you don't ask, honestly, you end up down this like rabbit hole. Projects go completely batshit crazy. People like just, you end up going, yeah, if you'd just been slightly clearer in your communication at the beginning, you probably would have saved yourself a ton of time. Right, we must be nearly running out. 10 and 8. Is that all we've got left? Yay. Right. Oh, come on.
Right, though. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. Most of you, if you want to go off and do cybersecurity, are not going to work in cybersecurity. Now that's not a, oh my God, AI is taking all the jobs conversation. It's that if you work at a company that makes plastic palm trees, that is what you do. You are there to help the business make plastic palm trees. And if you go and get really holier than thou, no, you can't do this for the securities, that company doesn't care about the security. That company cares about plastic palm trees. I actually I've been using plastic palm trees for years. And somebody came up to me at a conference and went, I use your plastic palm trees. I'm like, I have no idea who you are, but thanks. You know, I don't make plastic palm trees. No, I use it as an analogy. I was like, oh, right, brilliant. I'm really glad that, I did a talk and you took something away from it. But plastic palm trees, yeah, if you work in cyber, unless you work in an MSSP, the odds are you do not work in cyber. You work in a company that makes milk, it makes plastic palm trees, that makes fluffy dolls, that gets gas from one piece of the UK to another. That is what you need to worry about. Yes, feel free to make sure that somebody doesn't open RDP to the internet and leave their ass hanging out there. But ultimately, everything you're doing in your career is about making sure that the company can do that. And it's similarly, if you turn around and say, look, what we need is this type of firewall over here, because it's definitely what we need. It's the best in the market. It's going to solve all these problems. You might not get that because the company doesn't need it and it fixes a problem the company doesn't necessarily have or doesn't want to spend that amount of money on.
What is RDP?
Remote Desktop Protocol.
What some people might call VNC.
No, different protocol. But yeah, ultimately, when you work, you have to remember that everything you're doing is about what that company is trying to achieve. And if they want to achieve making plastic palm trees, then you have to design your incident response scenarios to sit there and say. So I once had a customer that printed newspapers. And so in the incident response plan, we had to detail in there is that if this happens, at no point, what happens at 2 in the morning, the print presses have to run. Doesn't matter what else you do, doesn't matter if ransomware is knocking out the entire enterprise, no matter what you do in your incident response plan, the only thing that matters to that company is that the presses run at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so you have to make sure that you design all your security controls, all your incident response plans have to be based around what does that company need to do and what's the most important. And you will find sometimes that you do not get the budget for the shiny new silver bullet like firewall, because actually the risk that you are talking about fixing doesn't add up in terms of how much it will cost if that happens versus how much it will cost to buy the firewall and maintain it. So at that point you go, no, you don't buy that. I mean, if it solves a problem that if that incident happens it costs me 10 grand, but the firewall costs 40 grand, I'm more than happy to, well, how often will this happen? Once a year, maybe? Okay, well, we'll pay 10 grand once a year. I'm not going to pay 40 grand for a firewall. Now everybody here sits and goes, you need to get the shiny firewall. But actually, no, what the business needs is to be able to do business. So if you are not working for an MSSP, you are making plastic palm trees. Question.
What would you need beyond just a regular NAT?
It really, really, really depends on what you need to do and how that organisation is set up. So firewalls are not necessarily just the perimeter, they control all your internal networking as well. So, network address translation.
Yeah.
Right. Are we at the finally? So, I'm happy to stop now, or do you want to know a time I fucked up? So, so while I was at the Bank of Scotland, I was making really crap changes to COBOL programs. It was like, Lloyds Bank has now got a new set of numbers that they're using at the beginning of their card, so you now need to go and update this code that runs to sit there and say, if you see this 6 digits at the beginning of the card, it's a Lloyds Bank. It was the dullest thing. I did that, and thank God for a sandwich degree, because I went into uni thinking I was going to be a programmer, and I went, oh my God, in the real world, this is the dullest job in the world. It's obviously moved on significantly now, but back then, this is the sort of like job that you were getting. You were sitting there going, right, okay, I'm going to look through hundreds of lines of COBOL that are older than I am, and look for, and at one point I looked at it and went, you know what? That would be much better as a case or a select statement rather than a bunch of nested ifs. And I went and looked at the guidelines for programming and went, yep. And I then did my proposal, put it to the project manager, and he wrote shite in big red pen and threw it back across the desk. I was like, I've just done everything. Wait, what? He said, no, we don't use case. You just do it with if statements. I'm like, I have no idea why, to this day why. But I have this tendency when I'm writing code to occasionally just do, print I got here. So it's like, Dave, I got to this line, Dave, I got to this line, so that when I'm debugging and stuff like that, I can follow the logic through, make sense, yeah? So I pushed my changes to prod, jobs are good, and I came in on the Sunday, and there was this massive ream of like old style dot matrix printer paper on my desk. It was like taller than I was. And I was like, what's this? And it turns out that I'd left one Dave got to this line, and it was just line after Dave, I got to this line, Dave, I got to this line, Dave, I got to this line, Dave, I got to this line. Turns out when it runs on the mainframe, anything that you would print to the screen comes out in the line printer. Turns out that when you break the line printer from putting too much through it, the autoteller network went down in Edinburgh on a Saturday night. So why is this? Well, one, it's funny. But actually, I use this as an interview question. Because nobody's perfect. And it's actually, well, how did you deal with it? One of the problems of interviewing graduates, for example, is you can't really talk to them about their work experience because they don't have any. So you go, right, okay, how do I actually engage with this person? And so, but yeah, you can ask anybody and just go, look, tell me a time you fucked up and what you did about it. And if somebody turns around and says, I've never fucked up, nah. Yeah, it's like everybody's messed up something at some point. There's just, nobody is perfect. So, yeah, it's a good interview question because you can turn around and say, well, okay, tell me a time. So are you open and honest? And tell me about how you fixed it and what the problem was. So, but yeah, it was, I brought down the autoteller network in Edinburgh on a Saturday night. It's like, I've never messed up since, like completely perfect. But but ultimately, but it is be upfront with your mistakes. If you make a mistake, you learn from it and you move on, and then just go, yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed of about making a mistake. And changing your name to colour, but but ultimately, yeah, it's just one of these ones where you just go, you know what, fine. Make a mistake, go forth. I mean, the whole fail fast and fix it quickly, sure, whatever. But ultimately, don't be I mean, if you make the same mistake over and over again, I'm going to fire you. Because, you're stupid. But learn from your mistakes, move on, and don't ever be ashamed to turn around and say, yeah, look, completely fucked up there. Sorry. But yeah, I was not popular that day. And I'm just sitting there going, what did I do with this? It was like huge and heavy and like But yeah, so turns out, yeah, you can bring down mainframes by printing "Hello Dave" too often.
So, what happened with all the paper after?
Yeah, I must admit, I was sitting there just now going, what did we do with all the paper? I think it just went into recycling.
I guess they put it up as bunting around the office to remind people that.
No, well, to be honest, that project man, that team lead project manager guy was a bit. Yeah, I mean, he was the same guy that looked like shite and stuff. I mean, so it was like, he was very aggressive, but he was a good guy. Did we get them all?
Yeah.
There you go. So, that's it. Done, dusted. Anybody got any questions?
What does the 6 in IPv6 stand for?
6.
And IPv5?
There isn't. So I don't think they never released it. But I don't think they've ever well, IPv6 is. There's somebody in our group that is doing her PhD and massively IPv6 nerd, scanning the internet for IPv6 ranges and stuff. And you're just sitting going, are you breaking the internet? She's like, maybe. But yeah, if there's ever an IPv6 question, it's just like, over there, just go over there. It's like that. I'm not even going, I mean, you can remember IPv4 addresses. Everywhere I worked, you ended up knowing them. You just can't do that with 6. It's just wrong. So,
I remember some of them. For example, colon, FFFF.
yeah, well, yeah, but when you've got like 20 servers and they've all got individual IPv6 addresses and you just see one go past, you don't go, that's domain controller 2. Whereas if you do IPv4, you go like, that's domain controller 2. Done. But yeah, IPv6 is just the devil. For years, and to be honest, I do not condone anybody doing criminal activity, but honestly, use IPv6. Most security tools don't even see it. There was like a year or something where I was sweating because Defender logs just didn't pull in IPv6. And you were like, but the customers rolled out IPv6. And you're like, this is just bobbins. So yeah, if you ever want to do something evil, IPv6, one, you're automatically evil for using IPv6, but it does allow you to get past a whole bunch of security controls and stuff.
Do you have any recommendations for using IPv6 when your network's IPv4 only?
No.
What does the WM stand for in @_Dave WM_?
M is McKenzie and W is Watson because it's my middle name.
Right. Couldn't not.
Nobody. I was going to say nobody's ever asked that question, but sure. The reason the underscores are on each side is because there's some twat in America that has Dave WM that's never they posted like 5 things and it was obviously a scam bot thing, but X or Twitter just would never kill the account. I'm like, look, it was like, hey, I'm doing this at the weekend. I mean, it was like spam, like tweets, and I'm like, just, can I get that? I'm like, no. So, underscores.
I couldn't not think of window manager.
Fair enough. Dave, the window manager. Sure. Any other questions?
Developer and then what they made.
Yep. Cool. Thanks, guys.